There's a moment that happens in most people's mid-20s that nobody prepares you for. You're sitting at your desk in your first real job, the one you spent 4 years and took out loans to qualify for, and you're looking at your paycheck after taxes. Then you look at your student loan payment, and you do some quick math in your head about rent, groceries, car insurance, and you realize something deeply unsettling. You have less disposable income now with your bachelor's degree and your professional job than your friend who started working at a warehouse right out of high school. He's been saving for 6 years. You've been accumulating interest. He just put a down payment on a house. You're trying to figure out if you can afford to move out of your parents' basement. And there's this quiet voice in the back of your mind asking a question you're almost afraid to say out loud. Did I make a mistake? My name is William, and I've spent years analyzing the financial architecture of life decisions that get presented to us as moral imperatives rather than economic choices. And what I found is that one of the largest wealth transfers in modern history is happening right now. And it's completely legal, socially encouraged, and happening to people before they're old enough to understand what they're signing. If you've ever felt that sinking realization that your degree might not have been worth what you paid for it, or if you're a parent trying to navigate whether college is still the right path for your kid, then what I'm about to walk you through will fundamentally change how you think about education as an investment. Here's the thing that makes this topic so difficult to discuss, honestly. We've been culturally conditioned to treat college as something beyond financial analysis. It's not just an expense, it's an identity milestone. It's a coming-of-age ritual. It's what responsible, ambitious, intelligent people do. And because it carries all of that emotional and social weight, questioning the return on investment feels almost blasphemous. It feels like you're questioning the value of learning itself, or suggesting that knowledge doesn't matter, or that you're some kind of anti-intellectual Philistine. But that's not what's happening here. What we're actually questioning is whether a specific financial product, a 4-year degree at current market prices, delivers returns that justify its cost. And that's a completely reasonable question to ask about any investment. Let me take you back to a specific turning point in economic history that most people don't know about: 1972. The federal government, trying to make college more accessible, begins expanding student loan programs. The idea is simple and well-intentioned. If cost is the barrier preventing smart, capable young people from getting degrees, then we'll remove that barrier by making loans freely available. Students can borrow what they need, get their degrees, and pay back the loans with their higher earnings. Everyone wins. But here's what actually happened. Colleges, suddenly facing a student population with essentially unlimited borrowing capacity, did exactly what economic theory predicts. They raised prices. Not a little. Dramatically. Because when your customers can always borrow more, there's no market pressure to keep costs down. Between 1980 and today, the average cost of college has increased by over 200% in real, inflation-adjusted terms. That's not 200% in nominal dollars. That's 200% after accounting for inflation. Meanwhile, the earnings premium for college graduates, the extra amount they make compared to high school graduates, has stayed relatively flat since 2000. So the cost of the product more than doubled while the return stayed the same. In any other market, consumers would revolt. They'd stop buying, they'd demand accountability. But in higher education, enrollment kept climbing because we'd convinced an entire generation that not going to college wasn't really an option. Now, let me show you what this looks like in actual financial terms, because this is where the abstract becomes visceral. I'm going to walk you through two parallel timelines. Two people, same high school, same family background, same intelligence, different choices. The first person, we'll call her Jessica, does what she's been told is the responsible thing. She goes to a state university. She studies marketing because she likes the idea of working in creative business environments. She works part-time during school, but it's not enough to cover costs, so she takes out loans, tuition, fees, room and board, books, living expenses. Over 4 years, she accumulates $95,000 in debt at an average interest rate of 6.8%. She graduates at 22 with a degree and a credential that she's been told will open doors. She gets a job in her field making $48,000 a year. It's not amazing, but it feels like progress. She's entered the professional world. The second person, we'll call him David, takes a different path. He doesn't go to college. At 18, he gets a job at a logistics company making $32,000 a year. It's not glamorous. He's doing inventory management and data entry, but he's earning. And because he's living at home for the first 2 years and then splitting a cheap apartment with roommates, his expenses are low. He takes $500 a month and puts it into a low-cost index fund. Every month, no exceptions. He doesn't think of it as investing. He thinks of it as paying himself before anyone else gets a cut. By the time Jessica graduates at 22, David has been working for 4 years. He's gotten 2 promotions. He's making $42,000 a year now. And he has approximately $28,000 in his investment account. Meanwhile, Jessica has negative $95,000 in net worth. The gap between them at age 22 is $123,000. Think about that for a second. Same starting point. 4 years later, they're $123,000 apart in net worth. Now, Jessica has a higher salary. She's making $6,000 more per year than David, but she also has a student loan payment of just over $1,000 a month. That's $12,600 per year going straight to loan servicing. So even though she earns more on paper, after her mandatory loan payment, she actually has less money available for living and investing than David does, and this continues for 10 years. For an entire decade, Jessica is in financial survival mode. Every month, that loan payment comes due. She can't invest, she can't save for a down payment, she can't build an emergency fund beyond a couple $1,000s because the loan is always there, eating into every paycheck. Meanwhile, David keeps investing. $500 a month becomes $600 as he gets raises, then $700. The compound interest starts to accelerate. By the time Jessica finally pays off her loans at 32, David has over $150,000 in investments. And now, for the first time, Jessica can start investing too. But she's starting from zero at 32 while David has a decade of compounding already working for him. Here's where the math becomes genuinely disturbing. Let's assume both of them continue to invest consistently from this point forward. Both get modest annual raises, both keep their expenses reasonable, both invest in the same index funds with the same historical returns. The question is, at what age does Jessica's net worth finally catch up to David's? I ran this through a financial model with realistic assumptions. 7% average annual returns, 3% annual salary increases for both, consistent monthly investments once Jessica is free of loan payments. The crossover point, the age at which Jessica's accumulated wealth finally exceeds David's, happens at 57 years old. Let me repeat that. If you take out $95,000 in student loans for a degree that leads to a median-paying job, you will spend 35 years of your working life financially behind someone who never went to college and simply invested the money they would have spent on tuition. 35 years. That's not an edge case. That's not a worst-case scenario. That's what happens with average debt, average salaries, and average investment returns. Now, I can already hear the objections forming in your mind. You're thinking, but William, this assumes the person without a degree can even get a job. Doesn't everyone require degrees now? And that's a fair question, but the data doesn't support it as strongly as you'd think. According to labor statistics, about 62% of jobs do not require a bachelor's degree. The unemployment rate for people with only a high school diploma is higher than for college graduates, yes, but it's not catastrophically higher. It's usually only 2 to 3 percentage points different. And more importantly, many of the jobs that do require degrees on paper are using education as a screening mechanism rather than because the work actually needs college-level skills. A 2017 study from Harvard Business School found that employers frequently require degrees for positions that were previously filled by high school graduates and where the job duties haven't changed at all. Executive assistants, sales representatives, production supervisors. These roles now list bachelor's degrees as requirements not because the job got more complex, but because the labor market got flooded with degree holders, so employers could raise their standards without raising wages. But here's where the analysis gets more nuanced, and this is important. College is not universally a good investment or universally a bad one. It's highly dependent on what you study. The difference in return on investment between different majors is staggering. If you get a degree in petroleum engineering or computer science or nursing, the break-even point might be as early as 30 to 35 years old, and your lifetime earnings premium could be over $2 million. These degrees pay for themselves relatively quickly, but if you get a degree in psychology or sociology or studio arts, fields where the median early career salary is $35,000 to $40,000, you might never break even. You could literally retire with less accumulated wealth than if you'd skipped college entirely, worked a trade, and invested consistently. According to research from the Foundation for Equal Opportunity, approximately 25% of all college degree programs leave graduates financially worse off than if they'd never attended. 1 in 4. That means if you walk into a college and randomly choose a major without looking at salary data, you have a 1 in 4 chance of making a decision that will make you poorer over your lifetime. This is where the psychological trap becomes clear. The decision to go to college is being made by 17 and 18-year-olds who have no framework for evaluating financial trade-offs of this magnitude. Most of them have never earned a salary, they've never paid rent, they've never felt the weight of debt. And we're asking them to commit to what is often the second largest financial obligation of their entire lives after a mortgage, based on vague promises about future earnings and social pressure from parents, teachers, and peers who all believe that college is just what you do. The system is designed to make the cost invisible at the moment of decision. Students don't write a check for $25,000 per semester. They sign digital documents they don't fully understand, and money they've never seen gets transferred directly to the institution. The pain of payment is delayed by years. Meanwhile, the benefits, the social experience, the independence, the credential, the status of being a college student are immediate and emotionally satisfying. This is a textbook example of present bias exploitation. The cost is abstract and future. The benefit is concrete and now. And human brains are notoriously bad at properly weighing those kinds of trade-offs. Here's the identity shift that needs to happen, and it's uncomfortable. You have to start seeing yourself as someone making an investment decision, not someone fulfilling a cultural expectation. When you're deciding whether to go to college and what to study, you're not asking, "What do I find interesting?" That's a question you can ask when someone else is paying. When you're taking on 6 figures of debt, the question you have to ask is, will this degree generate enough additional income to justify the cost and the opportunity cost? That's not a heartless question. That's not reducing education to dollars and cents. That's being honest about what you're actually doing. You're buying a financial product, a credential that is supposed to increase your earning power. And if it doesn't do that, if it leaves you financially worse off, then it doesn't matter how intellectually enriching the experience was. You overpaid. Let me show you what this looks like when someone makes the decision with clear eyes. I know someone, I'll call him Marcus, who got accepted to a private liberal arts college for philosophy. It was his dream school. He'd visited the campus. He loved the professors. He could see himself there. The total cost for 4 years would have been $180,000. He would have needed to borrow most of it. And then he did something most 18-year-olds don't do. He researched the median salary for philosophy graduates from that school. It was $41,000. He calculated the loan payments on $180,000 at 7% interest. It came out to over $2,000 a month for 10 years. He looked at the after-tax income of someone making $41,000 and realized that after loan payments, he'd have less than $2,000 a month to live on. In a major city, that's barely enough to cover rent and food. He wouldn't be able to save, he wouldn't be able to invest, he'd be trapped. So he made a different choice. He went to community college for 2 years, transferred to a state school, worked part-time throughout, and graduated with $18,000 in debt instead of $180,000. He studied the same subject, read the same books, had thoughtful professors, but he saved himself $160,000. That decision, made at 18 with clear-headed analysis, changed the entire trajectory of his financial life. By 30, he had a down payment saved for a house. By 35, he was maxing out retirement contributions. By 40, he was financially independent enough to start a nonprofit doing work he cared about. None of that would have been possible under $180,000 in debt. Now, the people who defend the current system will tell you that you can't put a price on education, that the intangible benefits, the critical thinking skills, the broadened perspective, the personal growth justify the cost regardless of salary outcomes. And I'm not going to tell you those things don't have value. They do. But here's the question you have to ask. Are those benefits exclusive to a 4-year residential college experience? Can you learn to think critically by reading books from the library? Can you broaden your perspective by traveling, by working different jobs, by engaging with people from different backgrounds? Can you grow as a person without spending $100,000? The answer is obviously yes. The college experience might be one path to personal growth, but it's not the only path. And it's certainly not a path that justifies financial ruin. Here's the brutal economic reality that nobody wants to acknowledge. The higher education system in its current form is extracting wealth from young people and transferring it to institutions and lenders, and it's doing so under the moral cover of education. Universities have no financial accountability for the outcomes of their graduates. They get paid whether you get a job or not, whether your degree was worth the price or not. Federal student loans guarantee that schools can charge essentially whatever they want because students can always borrow more. And when you combine unlimited demand-side financing with zero supply-side accountability, you get exactly what we have. Prices that have detached completely from value. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just incentives. Every actor in the system is behaving rationally according to their own interests. Schools want to maximize revenue. They raise prices. Lenders want to issue loans. They approve everyone. Employers want free screening mechanisms. They require degrees. And students, caught in the middle, are told that questioning any of this means they don't value education. It's a perfect system for everyone except the students. So what do you actually do with this information? If you're a parent, you have honest conversations with your kids about math. You don't just tell them to follow their passion. You help them understand that major selection is the single most important financial decision they'll make in their late teens. You show them salary data, you calculate loan payments, you make the abstract concrete before they sign anything. If you're a student, you treat this like the investment decision it is. You look at the all-in cost, including opportunity cost. You research median salaries for specific majors, not average salaries for all graduates. You exhaust every option to reduce costs, community college transfers, state schools, living at home, scholarships, employer tuition assistance. Every $10,000 you don't borrow is worth $15,000 to $20,000 in future wealth because of the interest and opportunity cost. And if the numbers don't work, if the break-even point is past 50, you seriously consider alternatives. Trade certifications, apprenticeships, coding boot camps, starting a business, working your way up in a company. These aren't consolation prizes. They're often faster, cheaper paths to financial security. The shift that has to happen culturally is that we stop treating college as a sacred ritual and start treating it as a financial product that needs to justify its cost. That doesn't mean education doesn't matter. It means we demand that educational institutions deliver value proportional to what they charge. And when they don't, When a degree costs $150,000 and leads to a job that pays $38,000, we call that what it is: a bad investment. We stop making excuses for it. We stop pretending the intangible benefits justify obvious financial harm. And we certainly stop pushing 18-year-olds into those decisions without giving them the tools to evaluate the trade-offs. Here's what I want you to take away from this. A college degree is not automatically an asset. It's only an asset if the math works, if the increased earnings justify the cost and the lost time. For some majors at some schools, the math works beautifully. For others, it doesn't work at all. And the difference between those two outcomes can be millions of dollars over a lifetime. You are allowed to do this analysis. You are allowed to say, this specific degree at this specific price doesn't make financial sense for me. You're allowed to choose a different path without shame. The people who would tell you that questioning the value of college is somehow anti-intellectual are often people with a vested interest in you not asking hard questions. The schools that collect the tuition, the lenders who service the debt, the employers who use degrees as free screening, they all benefit from you treating education as beyond financial scrutiny. But this is your life, your money, your future, and you deserve to make decisions based on reality, not on cultural mythology about what the responsible path is supposed to look like. 10 years from now, you're going to look back on this moment. And if you made the decision with clear eyes, if you chose the path that made financial sense rather than the path that felt prestigious or expected, you're going to be grateful. You're going to have options that your peers don't have. You're going to have freedom they don't have. And you're going to realize that the most important education you received wasn't in a classroom. It was learning to think for yourself about decisions that everyone else treats as foregone conclusions. That's the real value. That's what changes everything.